This is one customer interview transformed into a knowledge graph. It's complex. Human beings are very complex. It covers 4 journey phases. There are several hundred of typed nodes and relationships with them preserved in a graph. This particular journey was successful. Every emotion was satisfied, every concern addressed, but just one missed anxiety or one missing incentive, and the whole journey could have failed. The data was there, but before we had the graph, nobody could see it. Now with graph technology, qualitative data can be digitized in raw format, and that enables a whole new suite of applications. Thanks for joining me for my session on building a customer intelligence brain. My name is Eckhart Boehme, and I'm the creator of the Wheel of Progress and the customer progress design methodology. And I'm also co-managing director of UniPro Solutions. Within the next 30 minutes, I will guide you through our journey to building this customer intelligence knowledge graph. I will first talk about the problem. What are we trying to solve here? Then I will show you the process, how we got to building the graph. I have some examples of outputs that we were able to create. And also we'll take a look at the graph itself. So it's kind of looking as a brain surgeon within the brain and see kind of the mechanism, how it works. So let's jump into the issue. For those of you who are not familiar with qualitative customer data, this is the kind of data that gets produced by market research departments, by stakeholder groups within the company that need to make strategic decisions, like planning the next product or marketing people using qualitative data to produce marketing campaigns or a narrative or any kind of messaging. It's produced to better understand customers, how they think, what they feel, what they want to accomplish. The problem today is qualitative data is not being looked at as real, granular, kind of itemized data and connected data. It's being looked at as transcripts that may be chunked up in pieces and where the content is tagged. And that's about it today, how qualitative data is used. But when this kind of information stays in this kind of format, it's not really usable. It's not usable to its fullest extent. People usually use AI to summarize qualitative data, to get like the gist out of it. But they lose the causal details, unfortunately. Then still people need to interpret the data. They bring in their own biases. It's not machine readable, so you cannot really easily feed AI to produce outcomes. And it's very difficult to trace any decisions, any outcomes back to the original source of information coming from that qualitative data piece. So the result is that only a fraction of what was ever captured, which is in transcripts, in PowerPoints, in people's heads, in the company, really usable. It's very unfortunate. I would say it's a huge waste of precious money and resources today. And the opportunity we see with a knowledge graph, with bringing that qualitative data into a knowledge graph, is just tremendous. We can preserve causal structures. We can query the graph, traverse it. We can find like the causes of behavior, why people bought, why people didn't buy, what people were looking for, where they got stuck in a customer journey. And we can use AI agents to access the data and just to produce outstanding new deliverables. So this is where we think the future lies. It's turning this qualitative data into a graph and then making it full accessible. How did we get here? We did not wake up in the morning and said, okay, let's create a graph out of our data. No, in 2019, we actually started the process of itemizing the qualitative data from customer interviews. So interviews where customers talk about their experience buying a product, the whole search process, the experience phase, and everything in between. And this is a rich source of really nice information. And when we structure it, we can determine the value of those interviews. And we can access data directly and respond directly to categories of meaning. And that's really nice. And as I said, in 2019, we started the whole process of itemizing this data, of creating the rules, of creating our mental model, and later on the data model, which became our ontology. Now, this process of interviewing and then evaluating the interview using, for example, our wheel of progress on the right-hand side is a lot of work for human beings. It's a great exercise. You roll up your sleeves, dive into the data, you internalize it, but it's a lot of work, especially when you try later on to aggregate like 10 different interviews. You're easily working with 1,000, if not more, data points. And now imagine when we have like dozens or even hundreds of interviews or other sources of qualitative data. This becomes really a huge task. It's almost not doable by human beings. So in 2023, we started using an AI solution that helps us analyze the interviews to categorize each statement that we heard into like an element that became part of the whole story of people trying to make progress in their lives or in their work. And this was already a tremendous help because we could process a lot of data very quickly and very reliably. But one thing was missing. So in 2025, we discovered graph technology as the missing piece of our solution stack. And the wonderful thing about graph, as you all know, is that we can connect the dots. We can connect a pain that a customer feels to an action. We can connect that to a desired outcome, what people are looking for. So we can create this whole almost like neural network of nodes and edges that connect in a container a customer interview. It's a whole different level of intelligence than let's say, a transcript that is tagged, maybe, or it's going to be thrown into AI to try to make sense out of it. So we have tested this ontology for many years with client projects, and we have very stringent definitions of the items, so they are mutually exclusive. We have definitions on our relations that connect the dots, and we feel very confident that we have a really valid ontology for this customer progress domain, if you will. So it's been a long journey, and of course there's some IP in the process, but I'm going to show you some of the things that we do. But I cannot show you all the nodes and all the relations, because as I said, that is part of our company asset. So how do we build the graph? Of course, we start with collecting qualitative interviews with customers. And by the way, it could also be done with employees or with partners in your ecosystem. It doesn't need to be necessarily customers. I mean, we chose customers because this is what everyone wants to understand. How do customers tick? And so we do these qualitative interviews. We have a very structured way to ask questions. We want to understand the whole journey, of course. And then we use a transcript of that interview. And then we have a process where we identify these items. That's step number 2, what we call the CPD, structuring customer progress design, structuring into 12 elements. But that's not enough, as we know. We have to create connections between the data items, and this is going to be done in step number 3, where the triples are created. It's a very thought out process, because whatever relation we create needs to be valid. It cannot be just connect, hey, let's connect the dots, anything with anything. It needs to be very, very thoughtful, because we are talking about human beings. We need to have differentiated relations between the dots. And then once we have built all the triples, we equip the data also with properties that later on will help us to even better connect the dots, to do queries more effectively. So it's not just the data and the evidence, it's metadata, it's timestamps, it's kind of demographic data, where the interview came from, and so on. And by the way, since this data is so sensitive, because it's about human beings, and sometimes they share very personal stories, very personal issues, we give people a pseudonym. So the people in our database are not, that's not their real names, and we have a translation table, so we can, if necessary, find out who said what. So in the last step, this is, to me, the most exciting one, is using agents to access the data via MCP. And this has been really a breakthrough, because this enables us to make the graph database available and usable, really usable, to people who are not experts. People like marketing people, product people, planning people, even sales people who are not that technical, who cannot query graph databases, to use a simple box and ask a question and define their problem to get the output they need. So, as you can see here at the bottom part of the screen, we have certain node types. As I said, they are very strictly defined. We have edges, I think almost like 40 different types, to get the right of granularity in these relations. And that's what we are working with. So I already talked enough about the process and why it's useful to put qualitative data in a graph. Now let's take a look at an example. So last year, I started to interview people who are part of the an experience management global collaborative. There's a nonprofit organization, and I have permission to share the data. So I interviewed 9 people from around the world, and how this is going to look like in a graph, I'm going to show you next, and can zoom into the causal relationship. So you can see these are just a few hundred, I think 500 nodes. Here I'm going to zoom into an interview with someone I did with someone from the US. I hope you can see these different types, these different dots. And you can see how the relationships work. So we have at the bottom right-hand side, we have a pain. So someone feels a pain. I'm going to click on it so you can see what the pain is. So the current job role may be diminished by AI. Someone who's just afraid, okay, there's AI coming around the corner and I may lose my job. That creates actually a push. And the push is a force that moves people to the next step in the customer journey. So there may be lots of pain points building up, and that creates that push. But there are also some other pushes that don't have a relationship to a pain, but we've heard that that push, as you can see, we have lots of properties connected, even embedding vector, because we have to look across interviews and qualitative data to being able to compare them, to collapse them, to find similarities. So not only within one interview, but we want, of course, finding the same pains in other people's interviews. And you can also see, I'm going to scroll in a little bit more, how these pushes motivate a desired outcome. Desired outcome is a goal someone wants to achieve. Yeah, sometimes we don't know the product, we don't know the solution, but we know we want to have a better state in the future. And that also could be reinforced by a pull. I'm going to click on that. So a pull is a force that pulls you over. The pushes is just kind of pushing. Pulling is something that's very attractive. So you're looking at a solution and you see, okay, that's interesting, and it pulls me over. So this is just one example out of this whole kind of system of relations and nodes, how an interview could look like. Now, what's the value of all of this? I'm going to switch back to the presentation. And there was really one interesting fact that we found out after we put the data into the graph and played around with agents. And there was one thing that I want to talk a little bit about, that we discovered that people in this profession, the experience management profession, across the world, they want to learn from each other. Before we thought it's like the developing countries learning from the developed countries. So people in, let's say, countries where experience management is not that popular or not that professional in the time, they want to learn from people in the US, in maybe parts of Europe. And but through the analysis, we found that the opposite is true as well. So people in developed countries appreciate that global perspective, so they can exchange experiences with people from around the world. They want to learn also from them. That was a really interesting fact that we found out after we looked at the data and after we analyzed the data. And that shows us it's great to have that kind of data in a graph, because you can invalidate your assumptions. So let's move on to some other examples related to outcome. And I promised a live demo, and I'm going to switch over to Claude. And let me switch screens here in a minute, and we'll do a live query. That takes usually a little bit. Need to switch to another window. I hope this is the right one. Is this the right one? Yeah, it's the right one. And I prepared a query that should help us to understand why people joined the organization. So it needs to go into the graph, figure out what were all the kind of pushes that people had in their data that help us understand why they joined. So I'm going to let this run. It's a live demo, so I don't know how well it worked. And we'll come back. Let it run, maybe runs just a minute or so. And I want to show you some examples that we created using Claude Pro. And the first one is I think you can see it, is a prioritization heat map. So something product managers would be naturally interested in. So this is all data from the graph, and dynamically someone could create this outcome, this output that's usable. It's customized. it doesn't require a software. They build, so to speak, their own solution, their own software. It's even interactive. You can click here on any of these tiles and get like the business impact, like evidence from the graph with member quotes, with recommended actions. And here at the bottom, you have like an overview of pain profiles by different people. So it's very usable for people who need to decide what to fix next. The next one is really amazing, an amazing capability that I haven't seen before. It's clustering customer data in very innovative ways. It's not the typical thing by, let's say, by demographics, like white, female, 34 years, 2 kids, single mom, whatever. No, it's based on their needs, on their jobs to be done, on their, combined maybe with constraints. And this is what we created here. It's different categories of customers in a new way. The third example is a support plan for an individual. So we had, as I said, members joining the organizations, and we can easily, it's like at the click of a button, create a support plan, in this case for Christina from Switzerland. Here's a portfolio of solutions. So of course we have to educate the agent with our capabilities. It created a 12-month journey timeline, 9-point action plan. And the next day when I sent this to Christina, she said, where can I sign up? This is so great. This is so customized. It's exactly responding to my needs. And that was really amazing to hear that from her. All right, let's go back to our Claude application and see what came out of the query. And we can see this is what's got created. So what pushes are people pushing to become members? And we can even click on that chart and you can see the evidence coming up here. And we have an explanation, we have a summary why this happened. So I wanted to show you this is real. This is not something that's like invented or so. It's real data and real output. And I guess you don't need many other solutions that you have used before because you can create them on the fly. So let's jump back to the presentation and look at kind of the bigger picture a little bit. So you saw these 3 examples, and this is our vision, is helping organizations build these customer intelligence brains, how we call them. It's a living evidence layer. It's all the data they take in and saving it as a graph, so anyone can access it. We have done it with interviews, but we are sure it can be done with other context-rich qualitative data as well, maybe with focus groups, maybe with support and CRM records, with review and feedback. Important is to us, it's context-rich, and we store it in a Neo4j graph database, which becomes the brain, and then it can be accessed by different stakeholder groups to create whatever outcome they want. You can see that at the bottom. The more interviews you add, the bigger your brain grows. And I think the value proposition for this one is also doing something and not just analyzing the data. So 3 things, we are coming towards the end of the presentation, I want you to take away. One is qualitative data is one of the most underutilized assets in any organization today. That's after we have done this kind of work, we discovered we can create much more value out of qualitative data. The graph is to us the ideal data structure because it preserves the causality, because we can not only store data, but we can store connected data. It becomes like a baked-in intelligence. And the third one is a doing. We cannot only use the data to analyze. Like in a project, you do market research project, and then you think about it, you discuss it, and then you file it, and then it's gone. No, this becomes a living asset for any company, and can be updated, can be extended, and so on. So with that, we have a website, uniprosolutions.com, where we have a simulation, so you can simulate different queries. It's a simulation, but the outcomes are real. And don't be afraid to get in contact. We always appreciate feedback and also discussing possible your issues. And now we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So I'm looking. Might it give more weight to 9 interviews than it should? The data is not extensive. No, the data is not extensive. It's the more, of course, the more interviews we do, the more, the richer the data becomes. But it's evidence. It's how people perceive their reality. So I did this 9 interviews because that was all the time I had, but we are already working on a system how to systematically take in more interviews and automate the whole process. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Is it advisable to use an LLM to create relationships? That's how we do it. That's how we do it. We have a very dedicated process how to create the relationships. We call this the triple building. That was, I guess, step number 3 in our process. And this is something we have done as human beings before, building these triples on whiteboards, digital whiteboards. But yes, this is how we do it. Stephen has another question. No, that's it. Amazing presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you. How did you go from interview to graph? Or is that I cannot read this question, unfortunately. Konrad, I cannot, it's somehow cut off, but thanks for the feedback. I'm happy to stay on and discuss it a little bit later. Would this work? Have you tried this with survey data with open-ended responses? Yes, we have done it with not really survey data, but with an survey tool where people speak their responses, because we like people to speak and not to think too much and write it down and overthink it, but we want spontaneous responses. And we have described, or the engine transcribes the verbal comments, and then we took this in our graph. Yeah, that's possible. To use human interviewer? Yes, we do. We still like to do that. If so, that's because you get better responses. Well, I cannot say that with certainty, but certainly we like to interview people. Right now, we are also testing AI solutions to do this more dynamically. But if people spend time doing this, our customers, we want to appreciate that and also spend time with them. And I think it's kind of a human to human thing, which doesn't mean in future we'll have more AI-based solutions. So we are overrunning, unfortunately. How do you consolidate customer journeys across different organizations? Of course, they would need to be part of the data. And as I said, we are using vector embeddings to find similarities across all these interviews. I hope that answers the question. What else is needed to go from text to graph aside from an ontology? Well, that's basically our process, our 5-step process. There are many steps, I can tell you, with human in the loop to make sure the data is accurate and valid. But it's quite some work involved in doing that. But we are working on a fully automated solution. All right. Thanks so much. Hannah, do you have any closing words? No? All right. Then I want to say thank you to everyone. I hope this was inspiring and would love to talk if you are interested. Thanks very much.